Okay, welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. We have a very intriguing topic today, and I don't know that very many, if anyone, talks about this topic. It is the Pope question. So I'm not going to steal your thunder, so to speak, Ryan. So I'll turn it over to you to introduce this topic.
Okay, thanks, John. Yes, we are going to discuss the PQ, the Pope question, so to speak. Hey, before we got started, I wanted to go through this profession of faith. You know how before we were talking about in the pre-show, ladies and gentlemen, the highly rated pre-show, we were discussing baptism, and you know how you go through the profession of faith before you receive baptism. You go through and reject Satan and all this stuff. So maybe I should maybe I should question everybody and see if they reject a Vatican II and all its works and all its pomps and all its empty promises. Because that's kind of at the heart of the matter here. You know, I think all of us traditionalist Catholics have deep problems with Vatican II. Okay. And it remains an open question. And so, to get into back to the topic, the Pope question. Remember, I had the acronym a couple weeks ago, the LGB, whatever it was, and there was a Q, and I said, well, Q is questioning whether Bergoglio is Pope, and there's a ton of people like this. Last week, I have a friend who goes to a family that goes to Novus Ordo daily mass, and I asked them, I said, hey, of all the people who go to daily mass with you, what do the people think? Is Francis the Pope, or is he a fake Pope, or what's the deal? And they said, boy, most of them think that something's up and he's a fake Pope. So these are Novus Ordo people who are strongly questioning, doubting that Francis Bergoglio is a real Pope. So the first thing I want to address here is, I guess, kind of a definition here. This is a broad umbrella. We're talking about Sedevacantism or questioning. The question is really, is it possible for the Pope to fall from the papacy by heresy, or to be blocked from assuming the papacy because of a defect of form, matter, intention, baptismal character, membership in the church, etc., etc.? And the authorities, let's talk about who the authorities I'm going to talk about are. St. Robert Bellarmine, he says yes. Cardinal Cajetan says yes. St. Francis de Sales says yes. This is all possibility. So that's what I'm saying. Immediately, this is a possibility. It is possible for a Pope to fall from the office by heresy, or to be blocked from taking up the office. The easiest topic to discuss just quickly over here is what sort of impediments would there be to a man becoming the Pope? And let's consider the case of after his election. So we know, I looked up the church law about the election of a Pope, and it says that after a man is elected to the papacy, if he accepts, okay, if he is not a bishop, he must be first consecrated a bishop before he can assume office. If it's a priest who is elected, the dean of the College of Cardinals consecrates him bishop. If it's a layman elected, like John, this would be shocking, but you or I could be elected Pope next time around. But so if me or you is elected Pope next time, first we'd have to be ordained a deacon by the dean of the College of Cardinals, and then ordain a priest, and then consecrated a bishop. So the law is only after becoming a bishop does the Pope elect take office. So you could get a situation there where if the Pope accepts the papacy, but then he refuses to be consecrated a bishop because he says, like, well, you know, that whole celibacy thing I'm not so sure about. Or, wait, I just bought a yoke of oxen and I have to go test them out. Or if he says, like, wait, I'm scheduled to go to a vacation to the Bahamas, so when I get back, okay, then you can consecrate me Pope. Well, the Cardinals aren't going to say, well, we're going to cancel your election until you get back here, until you get ordained to the episcopate, or we're canceling your election. That they can't do that. So they're in a limbo land in that circumstance until the Pope, the guy who's been elected, submits to ordination to the episcopacy. Now imagine if there's a question about his consecration to the episcopacy. Let's say, maybe the consecrating bishop dropped dead halfway through the ceremony, or the Pope-elect fell asleep, or something like that. All these would be deep questions and probably even impediments to him becoming actually Pope. So there's one dubious question. Here's another idea or thing to consider. Can the Pope change the rules of the papacy? Like, let's say Francis decides to change the rules of the papacy and say, like, you know what, we're not doing an election anymore. The next Pope is going to be my illegitimate son, Gustavo Bergoglio, who lives in Argentina. You don't know about him, but Gustavo Bergoglio is going to be the next Pope because he's my illegitimate son. Is this legal or illegal? When Bergoglio dies, does his illegitimate son become Pope because Francis changed the law? Good question. Can the Pope make the next conclave? Actually, can the Pope change the rules of the conclave and say it's an auction, like Monopoly or something like that, and then he resigns? He names himself as as Camerlengo of the College of Cardinals. Then he resigns and goes and goes into the auction house in the Sistine Chapel and collects, how many billions from his successor for being the next Pope. Would this be a block, an impediment for the next guy for receiving the papacy? What about the question of intention? Does intention at all matter? Like, the cardinal asks you when you're elected, do you accept your canonical election as supreme pontiff? Well, what if you are a liar, a KGB agent, a CCP agent, a Mason, an atheist? What? And your intention is to destroy the Catholic Church. Do you really become Pope? Those are questions there. What about the papal oath and the symbols of the papacy? Are those an exterior manifestation of the office, or are they an intrinsic portion or component of receiving the full office of the papacy? More questions. Is the papacy a sacrament, or a sacramental, or a juridical office? So it seems that according to the way the election is run, that it's just a juridical office. You are elected, you accept. If you're a bishop, it's automatic. Nothing needs to happen. But it seems like Pope Benedict has a different theory. And let me just say, I don't think it's a sacrament because it's not on the list of Trent. And I think the Council of Trent closed the list of sacraments. So I don't think that there's an indelible mark on the soul like what occurs at ordination to the priesthood or the episcopacy. But it seems like Pope Benedict thinks that there is. He seems to think that he's always going to be some sort of Bishop of Rome. And my question is, does that make him think that he's always some kind of Pope? And so the differences between the juridical office and the spiritual dimensions of the papacy are not well defined and established. And you can see that because if the man elected to the papacy is already a bishop, when he says yes, he becomes the Pope. But and apparently no special ceremony is required, which means it's strictly a juridical office. But then we all know that there is some subsequent inauguration or coronation ceremony. What does that do? Why is it necessary? Why can't the Pope just go out and take a bite out of a hamburger and say, hey, I'm the new Pope, welcome? Why does he go through this whole ceremony? And I ask the question, I posit, is it possible that the ceremony that the Pope undergoes is, so when he's elected, he becomes juridically the Bishop of Rome, but when he goes through the coronation ceremony, that's when he gets his special spiritual powers of being successor of Peter, head of the universal church, so that he has the power to confirm the brethren. He's the visible principle of unity in the Catholic Church. So those are all things to discuss having to do with impediments to a man becoming pope, and sort of the distinction between the juridical office of the papacy and the spiritual component of the papacy. Do you have any questions about that?
Not yet. Whenever you were speaking, it made me think of President Xi, if he were to be elected, with all those bits and pieces of, like the highest bidder. Well,
yeah,
it could go to President Xi. So
Pope Xi Jinping.
I mean, how far away are we? I mean, how much of the Vatican does he run?
I don't know. That's the scary thing. That's the scary thing, as you mentioned. It was either you or Brett mentioned about what are you going to do if you get patriotic church Chinese cardinals and they go in there and they're KGB or they're Communist Party agents, and they're going to go into that conclave, and how is that going to work? Because they're basically going to be spies. They're going to tell Xi and everything about what went on in there, and that is a bad idea. It's terrible.
Well, and this is probably for a different show, but yeah, right now there are only two retired cardinals who are from China, Hong Kong actually, and one's Cardinal Zen. The other ones are retired. The other one might actually be older than Cardinal Zen.
Wow.
He's a retired cardinal from Hong Kong as well. So right now there's no cardinals from China. Now people speculate about what's his name, Tagle, Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines. Both his parents were Chinese, but I don't know. So far, no Chinese cardinals, but we will bring that to you. I'm not going to let that slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
if Chinese bishops are appointed cardinal.
Yeah, that's going to be troublesome.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for me to move on here?
Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about the particular theories of Sedevacantism here. I classified this into three particular categories here, and I'll discuss those, and you can ask questions. There's what I call hard Sedevacantism or dogmatic Sedevacantism, which says effectively that there is no question that the guy purporting to be pope, in this case Bergoglio, is certainly without question not a pope, and he doesn't have any juridical power, and he doesn't have any spiritual power. And I hope I'm not wrong, but I think that the CMRIs and like Cicada and Dolan belong to this particular theory. I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But this might be called dogmatic Sedevacantism. And now, then
what is CMRI?
CMRI is a group of Sedevacantist clergy that's headquartered in Washington State, and they have a ton of priests and religious and chapels all over most of the Western United States and in some places in the Eastern United States. So you can look them up. I think they're the oldest, one of the oldest Sedevacantist groups in the world. I think they were established in the early 70s. I think they're from the Tuke line. I'm not entirely sure. The second large group, or second theory here, is called the Sedeprivationist theory. And this was posited by Bishop Gerard de Laurier, who I've mentioned him before. He was a professor, a Dominican professor in Rome at a pontifical university. He was the confessor of Pope Pius XII. He worked actually on drafting the decree to promulgate the dogma of the Assumption, which we just celebrated 3 days ago. He helped write that dogma proclamation for Pope Pius XII, okay? And he developed this thesis called the Cassiciacum thesis, I believe it's called, and he published a paper about it. But mainly what it says is that it's called the material formal distinction, where you have the Pope is truly elected and is truly designated as the Pope, but because there's an impediment to him receiving the office, which is like heresy, that would be the main obstacle. But because he holds a heresy, that he's actually prevented from receiving the spiritual powers of the papacy. So he remains a Pope elect or a Pope designate. And that's the theory that Bishop Delorier subscribes to. Bishop Sanborn of Most Holy Trinity Seminary, you've seen him on YouTube probably. If you haven't, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care whether you're a Sedevacantist, SSPX, Novus Ordo, or whatever. You should watch Bishop Sanborn on YouTube. His sermons are fantastic. They are like some of the best sermons that you will ever hear. And he is the rector of Most Holy Trinity Seminary in Florida. So sedepravationism, material formal distinction. Bergoglio is a Pope designate, but because of some heresies, he hasn't received authority. And then lastly, there's what I call, I'm going to throw this in there too, and this is called what I call the suspense theory, or maybe that's what Father Hunwick has called it. And this was a proponent of this is actually Father Hunwick, who doesn't like Sedevacantism. He says it's wrong, but he's quoting St. John Henry Cardinal Newman, who said that during there was one particular Christological controversy. I don't remember if it was Monothelitism or Arianism or something like that, that the Pope refused to teach true Catholic doctrine. And he got into all these ambiguities and silence. And so therefore, he, in essence, like put down the papacy, like as if I have this, imagine this is the papacy here, and I refuse to drink this water for whatever reason, and I just put it down over here on this table. And in some sense, I'm still Pope, but I'm not doing Pope things anymore. I've sort of given up my authority. Now I have the potential to do Pope things and pick them up, but until I go and pick up this glass and teach dogmatic Catholic theology, I've sort of like gone on a vacation or whatever. And so, Father Hunwick gets this from St. John Henry Cardinal Newman and calls it the papacy in suspense. I'm classifying that as sort of a theory of Sedevacantism, because it's sort of like sedepravationism, but it's the circumstance where you've gotten the papacy, but you set it down again for, because you're heretical, you're heterodox, whatever. So those are, in general, three particular theories there of Sedevacantism. Do you have any questions about those?
No, not yet.
I see Patty made a comment about Father Jenkins says
yes.
They put that up there. Father Jenkins says they still should be brought into the conversation. I don't know who is the subject. Father Jenkins belongs to the Society of St. Pius V. And you can watch I recommend watching their programs on YouTube. They have a channel called What Catholics Believe. And it's really interesting because they've been doing that program since the 80s. And you can go back there and watch. I sent one to you and Brett. It was, I believe, an episode where Pat Buchanan was on there twice. And you see Pat Buchanan on there with these, I don't know if I want to call them Sedevacantists, because, the official position, apparently the SSPV, is that they say that the Pope question is an open question. And they don't have any authority to say yes or no whether he's Pope. I mean, they have grave doubts because of what's gone on at the Vatican II and the new Mass and the new outlook and the theology and the ecumenism and whatnot. I think maybe if you wanted to, you could put that into another sub-theory, maybe this is what Patty's indicating, is another sub-theory would be the questioning theory. The theory is we just don't know, because things are so chaotic. And so the best course in when you have such a deep question is to just keep doing what you were doing. And that means just keep saying the old Mass. Don't change any of the theology. Don't listen to any novelties from Vatican II. Don't accept any new rites. Okay. In the pre-show, we talked about the new rite of baptism versus the old rite of baptism. Ordination rites or anything, confirmation, whatever, it doesn't matter. The SSPV position, or what I might call, as I understand, the official questioning position, is just we're not going to deal with any of that stuff because we don't have the authority to answer. And I've heard Father Jenkins say, like, until we get an unquestionable, sound Catholic Pope, then we can't be dogmatic about any of this stuff. And yeah, okay, so Patty confirms that was his point exactly. Yeah, so add that in there into the list of these particular theories. John, do you have any questions about those 4 theories there?
Not right now, but I do think that's interesting that you said that the one group was not even maybe Sedevacantist, because
SSPV is not officially Sedevacantist. They just consider it to be an open question.
Well, they're probably, I'm assuming they're not canonically recognized by Rome.
Correct, they're not. That is correct, they're not.
Now, I know the word Sedevacantist gets thrown around a lot. Like Taylor Marshall was always accused of being a Sedevacantist.
Yeah.
Like any Catholic that spends some time on Twitter is probably accused of being a Sedevacantist by the Church of Pachamama. But yeah, it's. I don't know.
What is they use that like it's a slur. Like all of a sudden it's the same as being, at least get a slur that's biblical, like Pharisee, Sadducee.
They won't say that.
Yeah, probably it'll get censored or whatever, because that's that's
anti-Semite.
Yeah, you can't have that. So I mean, what are the other slurs? A Samaritan.
Oh, well, that's racist.
Okay, so you can't call somebody a Samaritan.
Yeah, all they can do is call you a Sedevacantist.
Sedevacantist.
Well, okay, well, are you okay with being in communion with the Church of Pachamama?
Yeah. And let me tell you something. I remember when Pope, it was when Pope John Paul II died. I sent an email out to all my friends, and I said, I have to announce to everybody I am a Sedevacantist. And one of my friends, who's now a Dominican priest, he wrote back and he said, "Oh no, our dog, no." I was laughing so hard, and like, he doesn't understand it at all, But I mean, we've all been Sedevacantists. There's no question when Benedict, well, actually, there was a question when Benedict quit, if he actually did quit and wasn't Pope anymore. But when JP2 died in 2005, when his corpse was cold, there's everybody who's a Catholic was actually, there are exceptions, because I think Pope Michael was still alive. And then there was that guy in Palmar de Troya. So let's just say that like 99.9% of Catholics were Sedevacantists in 2005. So you can use it as a slur, but it's factually correct a lot, some of the time. Without any doubt, Sedevacantism is true and can be true. Now, any other questions? Do you have any questions? Can I move on to the next sub point here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, now let's talk about schism. This is another interesting topic, and I'm just going to briefly go through this because this is a bunch of stuff here. Cardinal Cajetan says that it is possible for the Pope to become a schismatic, and this was published by, actually, I think he did posit that, but I read an article on Tradition in Action, their website, and the title of this is, By Departing from Traditional Worship, a Pope Falls into Schism. And this is quotations from teachings of Cardinal Juan de Torquemada, who lived from 1388 to 1468. And he said that a pope can separate himself from the body of the church if he does not observe that which the church universal observes on the basis of the tradition of the apostles concerning, etc., etc., blah, 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 did not observe that which was universally ordained by the universal councils or by the authority of the apostolic see, above all in relation to divine worship. For example, not wishing to observe personally something from the universal customs of the church or the universal rite of the ecclesiastical cult. And then there's some other quotes here. So it seems to be the case that the Pope could actually separate himself and become a schismatic if he tries to drastically alter the rites, the worship rites of the Catholic Church. That's a whole nother topic, but I'm asking the questions here. Is it possible for the Pope to go in schism from the Catholic Church? Cardinal Juan de Torquemada says yes. Is it possible for the Pope of Rome to go in schism from the Roman Church, not from, just from that particular subset of the Catholic Church? This is another question that you could do a whole show on. Is it possible for the Roman Church to go in schism from the Catholic Church? I think that this is possible, and we might be going through that situation right now. You know that the Byzantine Church was in schism for like a long time. That whole Catholic Church of Byzantium was in schism, and like a lot of the Eastern churches, and then some of them have come back. But I also think it's possible for the whole Roman Church to go into schism from the Catholic Church, and we might be living in it right now. Because as you know, the Pope actually has he has 3 crowns. I said that on Sunday, and then somebody that was there beside me said, well, actually he doesn't, because he wasn't coronated. So, but I mean, if he was, the Pope has 3 crowns, and they represent various degrees of authority. The Pope is head of the Diocese of Rome. He's head of the Roman Catholic Church, and then he's head of the Catholic Church. And there is a distinction to be made when the Pope exercises one aspect of that power versus another aspect of that power. Just as Bishop of Rome, he has the ability to make laws for the Diocese of Rome. And then as head of the Roman Catholic Church, this is the power that he exercised, that Paul VI either did or attempted to exercise after Vatican II, when he changed every one of the rites of the Roman Catholic Church. He invented a completely new everything with all the sacraments, okay? But remember, that was only the Pope as head of the Roman Church. That did not affect the Byzantines, the Ukrainians, the Armenians, the Maronites, the Syro-Malankars, all that stuff. So the Pope could do something completely terrible to the Roman Rite, and it doesn't affect the entire body of the Catholic Church. And that's all I have to say about that. Do you have any questions about that one?
No, I don't. But so you have more on that, right?
No, I'm done. I'm done with talking about schism, because that's a whole nother. That's just so much to talk about there.
Yeah, that's not a whole lot on that.
Yeah.
Because I could ask questions all day and not have answers. But yeah.
So are you ready for me to move on to the papal protections?
Yes.
Okay, so this is where we kind of get into the whys of the Pope question, or the Sedevacantism question. This really gets down to how much is the Pope protected from heresy? If you have a super high view of the papacy as being protected from heresy, like you're an ultramontanist, then when the papacy starts to crack up, then you end up becoming a Sedevacantist. Or if you embrace the heresy, then you turn out to be like where Peter is, and you're just saying like Pachamama is the eighth sacrament, and we love. I'm not even going to say that, but you get where I'm going.
I don't. Yeah, I see where you're going with that, but I don't know that they are actually in that category because I think
they're an example.
They are like. I think Catholic Answers might be a good example.
They're that bad? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't listen to them. From what Tim Gordon was saying on Taylor Marshall's show, they were always, making excuses for Pope Francis. However, Trent Horn wasn't a big fan of the jab, so I don't know. Maybe not anymore. But I think where Peter is there, I don't know if they were fans of Pope Benedict.
I don't know. Did they even exist when Pope Benedict was Pope?
I don't know, but if you get a trad pope, would they reverse everything that they said? I would highly doubt it.
I don't know.
I think they're more of the Church of Pachamama than. But anyway, that's a good. I mean, that's a pretty relevant example, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the deal is like before, if you think about this, when Pius XII was Pope, he was the super Pope. He was like the. I'm going to compare him to Stalin, Hitler, Mao, JFK. It was a cult of personality. Like he was JP2 before there was JP2. And he was like this oracle. You've seen the photographs of him where there's all these photographs and he's doing this great big sign of the cross. And it's like young Pope. If you've ever seen any of the clips from young Pope, that's kind of like how Pius XII was. He was this super figure. And everybody, there was this super duper cult around him that he like that everything he said was magisterial, and that's what a lot of these pre-conciliar guys grew up with. Lefebvre and all these SSPV guys, they're talking about Pius XII and Pius IX and the 10th and the great magisterium, and you have to do everything that they say. So when you go through that, then you get a Paul VI. It's either he can't be the true pope. So there's your reaction. Now, if you have I call it medium view of the papacy as being protected from heresy, then when it starts to crack up, you become a recognize and resist type traditionalist, which is SSPX, Taylor Marshall, most trads online, Anthony Stein, Return to Tradition. Then you're Salza and Cisco, who wrote the book, True Pope, False Pope, I think it's called. Recognize and resist. Williamson's in here. You mentioned if we would talk about him, and I said there, his name appeared. Williamson and the SSPX guys, they are what I call their medium view of the papacy. So they say that the Pope can like become a heretic and do stupid stuff and all this, but so in that case he's still Pope. You just resist him. And then you have what I call a low view of the papacy. You still believe in the papacy, but you don't think it's all that much protected from heresy. So when it starts to crack up, you criticize it, you laugh at it, you ignore it. And I'm going to say that's Father Hunwick, Eccles, most of the mainstream trads, like Fraternity of St. Peter people. They're here in the low view of the papacy, where they're just like kind of ignoring it, tuning it out, making fun of it. And so that's your other. There's three mechanisms for dealing with it, and I think it's which one you follow depends upon what you think are the powers of the papacy, and what protections it has from heresy. So I'm done with that section. Do you have any questions there?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
When the media love him, he's really cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Actually, a little bit of a side note there. I mean, it was crazy that this is how I gained my incredible skepticism of the media was they hated Pope Benedict.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that I've ever seen a good thing in the mainstream media said about Benedict. And then whenever Francis was elected, it was like, oh, this guy's awesome. Like Time Magazine, Man of the Year.
I will say that happened, but it didn't happen right away. If you remember, it was like the first month that Francis was Pope, or purportedly Pope, whatever he is. The media actually attacked him. Do you remember? when they attacked him because they said he had connections to the Argentine dictatorship, that he was responsible for priests who went missing and were tortured by the government, that he cracked down way too harshly on liberation theology. Yeah, this was the narrative that they had in the first few weeks of the Francis papacy. Then at some point in time, I don't remember the first thing he said, if it was an airplane. And then he was talking about hell and the devil, like the whole first month he was pope. And he mentioned hell and the devil more in that like first month than any like post-Vatican II pope ever had combined before that. So, and the media hated him. Then at some point in time, he said something. It might have been an airplane thing, or said something about the rainbow agenda that was...
Yeah, who am I to judge?
I think it was Who Am I to Judge? And then all of a sudden, everything turned, and they liked him then.
Yeah, well, they started to, and then it just... they haven't stopped liking him. I mean, they have their moments, but...
Yeah. They were even willing to overlook when the CDF said that you can't bless gay unions.
I think they weren't happy about that. I saw some of the places, but they just called up their friend Father James Martin, and got some interviews with him, and he said, "Oh well, you know,
he didn't mean
really
it.
Sad.
His fingers were crossed.
Yeah,
pretty
much.
When he signed it, yeah." He actually didn't sign it. It was some underling in the CDF.
Yeah,
and he's gonna get sacked.
Yeah, and they said, well, it can always be changed, and
yeah,
you know, I don't know.
Well, just like the motu in proprio can be changed, and Pope Francis really did mean it. He had his fingers crossed when he signed it, and it was the evil entourage. It was like Zen and the evil entourage theory that it could not have been Pope Francis. If he only knew what was going on, he wouldn't have signed this evil document. He's drugged and kept in prison and in a basement, and he's been replaced by a stunt double. You know, that's like, this is, come on.
Yeah, he doesn't actually mean it. And
no.
We must be okay. Like, we must obey anyway. And like, really? Like, you know, because he's, I don't know, the obedience crowd too.
You know why? They grew up under Pius XII. When Pius XII was Stalin.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Pius XII was Stalin, but not a communist. The cult of personality was there. The propaganda posters. He was Big Brother, and Zen still is that way. He thinks that it's not possible for the Pope to have done anything wrong ever. It's always got to be handlers and duplicitousness and whatever.
Well, I really like Cardinal Zen, so I hate to rag on him too much.
Well, I like that he celebrates the old mass, but
well, and he's in a tough spot in, you know, a difficult situation in China. And plus, he's like 90. I mean, how many 90-year-old cardinals just sit around, and how many of them are like competent? You know?
That's a good question. I don't know. I probably none. There's not too many.
Yeah.
How many 90-year-old cardinals are there?
So he's like this wise old cardinal, and
yeah,
I'd like to shake his hand, but I don't think I'll ever get the chance. Anyway, do you have anything else on?
Oh yeah, well that was the done with the papal protections, and I'm ready to move into the objections to Sedevacantism. If you're ready for that.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of objections here, and that you know, I was there on Sunday. We were there after Mass, sitting with a bunch of people, and I said, I'm going to argue for Sedevacantism. I want you all to come fight me. Come at me, bro. Where's my hand here?
Okay.
Come at me, bro. So I said, give me all your best arguments against Sedevacantism. And one that people throw out, which might be, it seems like it's a good one, but I don't really think it is Vatican I says that there's perpetual successors in the papacy. And I think that you have to understand that in its context. That I think it seems to me, is to block off Protestants who say that the office of Peter died with Peter, and so that therefore there's no universal role anymore. I think that's why Vatican I said that, and I even think it was just in passing when they were defining papal infallibility. I'm not really sure. I would have to look at that closer. But that's not an objection because, again, there's been times where popes died and there hasn't been a pope for 2 years while they're getting ready to elect and that kind of thing. Furthermore, Sedevacantists don't deny that there is a permanent office of Peter. They all accept that. And even Sedeprivationists or the Suspense Theory guys say that, oh, yeah, there's a perpetual successor, St. Peter, and that's Bergoglio, but he just doesn't have, because of a barrier, he can't actually pick it up because he put this barrier there, and he won't actually pick it up because of his heresies and his universalisms and his actual hatred and rejection of Catholic tradition. So I don't think that objection flies. Another one.
That's an important point to make, because whenever we're talking, even the SSPX Crisis in the Church series, they talked about Sedevacantists, and they said that basically they reject all the popes after the Second Vatican Council. But if you look more in depth, your points, there is a visible head of the church. There's even if he's whatever they would call it, invalid, or he didn't assume the office because of heresy or whatever. So I think that's an important distinction to make in this situation.
Objection 2, I heard this one on Sunday. The gates of hell shall not prevail, Matthew 16. And my question back is, over whom or what? If you do an exegesis on that passage, it says, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. It's talking about the church, not Peter, because we know Peter failed a bunch of times. Even right after that, he said, oh, don't get crucified. And then on the night of Holy Thursday, he told a lie and said, I don't know this guy, and ran away. So his faith is not, it doesn't seem that his faith is unshakable, but we know the faith of the church is unshakable. Point 3, or objection 3, I guess this is a sub point of that. Is there any guarantee that any apostolic church will keep the faith? These are churches set up by the apostles, which would be Jerusalem, Antioch, Constantinople, Rome. I don't know. I don't see a guarantee from that in Scripture, and I don't know about tradition. Mainly, Christ promises that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church, which is the universal Catholic Church, not necessarily Constantinople, Jerusalem, Antioch, Rome, because we've seen that Jerusalem fell away, Constantinople fell away, Antioch fell away, and they've been here and back and all this stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know Father Ripperger pointed out that each of the apostles, or each of the apostles has like a right that derives from their lineage, or something like that. And I haven't looked into it, but it would be really interesting to do that, because Rome is of course Peter, but then the other ones, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of shaky on the rest of them. Like,
Well, I know that the Indian rites, I believe, are St. Thomas.
St. Thomas, yeah.
And St. Mark is Alexandria, I believe, but St. Mark is very close to Peter, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's just very interesting point, and it would be worth looking into at some point.
Another objection that I heard on Sunday was, well, if a guy's a fake pope, then he appoints fake cardinals, and fake cardinals can't elect a true pope, so it's all game over. I hear this all the time. And Bishop Pivarunas of the CMRIs had an absolutely fantastic YouTube that blows this out of the water based on tradition and history alone. And he pointed out that during the Great Western Schism, there were 2 fake popes and 1 real pope, and they all had their own cardinals. And so, as you remember, what happened is, I think every pope went and quit and said, like, okay, all of our cardinals are going to go into a pot and elect a true pope. And they did it. And everybody recognized it. So that proves that fake cardinals can elect a true pope. And it's not even a requirement, because, as I pointed out very early on, it's purely a juridical act to elect a pope. You don't even need the faith to do it, because Francis could name an atheist to be a cardinal. Maybe there already are atheist cardinals. Maybe most of them are. I don't know. But they can legally elect a pope. It's not like there's no requirements for these guys. So fake cardinals can elect a true pope, and that's not a real objection. Objection number 5 is usually something like, well, you're going to be damned, or you're a schismatic, or that kind of thing. And my question to that is, damned for why? For supporting a fake pope, or rejecting a guy that we think is a fake pope? Because we point out many times St. Vincent Ferrer supported a fake pope during the Great Western Schism, and he's a saint, canonized by a real pope. So what is worse, saying X is a fake pope but Y is a real pope, and being wrong because you can get canonized that way, or saying X is a fake pope and therefore there is no real pope? I mean, it's actually worse to reject a true pope and to support a fake pope than it is to reject a fake pope and not have a real one to support in his place. So if St. Vincent Ferrer can get canonized for being wrong twice, why can't a Sedevacantis get canonized for being wrong once? Okay, and that's just a possibility, that if he happens to be wrong, we don't even know if the Sadies are wrong, period. So I don't find that you'll be damned. I don't find that argument supporting at all. The next objection, which this seems to be the most prominent one, which is so annoying, as you see in these comment boxes on YouTube all over the place, is, you are a Protestant because you reject the authority of the Pope. And let's think about this. Protestantism is many things. Principally, it's a change of soteriology, namely, which is how you get saved, which was fueled by abuses. This was all concocted by Luther. What followed was a shift in authority from the hierarchy, which rested upon scripture and tradition, and that authority was transferred over to the individual interpretation of scripture alone. This is Protestantism. The individual interpretation of scripture then rejected patristics and Catholic doctrines. This obviously led to a separation from the hierarchy and a new worship service, which was the Lutheran service, and a new theology, which, for instance, is the Augsburg Confessions of the Lutheran Church. This doesn't apply to Sedevacantists because they're not changing anything. They're not rejecting Catholic soteriology or patristics or inventing a new worship service or a new theology. But wait a minute, who's doing that? Well, is there a change in soteriology between pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II? Well, pre-Vatican II said the way to get saved is to get baptized, believe all the church teaches, receive the sacraments. Now, post-Vatican II, it's like, just be nice. Bishop Barron, be a nice guy, you'll get to heaven. Oh, no, all these many paths. There's so many paths, and they're so broad and wide. Everybody's on them. We're all on our way to heaven, according to Barron.
Imagine Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
you know, Bishop Barron's a fan of Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
You know, imagine no religion.
Well, wasn't that's John Lennon that was Imagine No Religion?
Oh, sorry about
Yeah.
that. I guess I'm not into the hip music of the youth.
You're showing that you were a rigid traditionalist because you don't know Bob Dylan and John Lennon. I can see
all the people leaving the live chat.
They're dropping out. They're quitting.
Subscribing.
They're dropping their Patreon support because of that.
Not relevant. Sorry, guys. All are welcome. Well, let me sing My Little Pony.
Yeah. Is there a change? Back to the change. Is there a change in the bedrock of between Vatican II and pre-Vatican II? Well, pre-Vatican II, the hierarchy rested upon scripture and tradition. And post-Vatican II, the bedrock is the hierarchy alone. Sola obedientia, sola auctoritas. Listen to me or you're out, you dirty Protestant. Do what I say. Don't pay any attention to the pre-Vatican II tradition, or don't pay any attention to the fact that we changed all the sacraments. You listen to what I say. I am the Pope. and they're like pounding the table. And has the present hierarchy rejected patristic Catholic doctrines? Well, it seems like it to me. I mean, the Pope today says, I like the commandments, but I don't have to obey them all the time. Like, what? It's just nonsense.
Yeah, he did. I have the quote.
Yeah.
I just emailed it to you guys. He said, "I observe the commandments, but not as absolutes." But he's been saying this kind of stuff for years.
It's madness.
He's been saying, "Oh, these rigid seminarians, they focus too much on the sixth commandment." Like, what?
You would say that if you were out there violating the sixth commandment, wouldn't
like
you?
One of his bishops in Brazil.
Yeah, that dude.
That was pretty horrible.
That dude should be removed from the clerical state and beaten with. He should be sent to the Taliban to be punished. That would be good for him.
To evangelize the Taliban.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
No, they need to evangelize him, I think.
Yeah, that's another topic.
Yeah. Okay, so let me counterattack this accusation of Protestantism. Here's my question. Is the new Mass Protestant, yes or no?
Well, that's a good question.
Did we not this weekend? I don't know if you heard Ben mention this, but Ben said that he grew up a Lutheran and he converted to Catholicism 4 years ago. Ben said that the Lutheran service is exactly the same as the new Mass. He said the difference is they don't say, "and with thy spirit," they say, "and also with you." So it's like the original version of Novus Ordo. And he said that they kneel for Holy Communion in the Lutheran. So they have a higher reverence for their fake sacrament in Lutheranism than the Novus Ordo Catholics do.
Well, so, I'm ashamed to admit, I actually have been to a Lutheran service once. It was a wedding, and there's a lady priest, and it was outdoors, and it was very similar to the Novus. Mm-hmm. I remember that, so I can verify that.
Yeah.
Now they didn't kneel for communion; they shared it with everyone.
Okay. Well, how's that any different than the Novus Ordo?
Yeah.
Because Bergoglio wants to give Holy Communion to Protestant. Why not? We have the same religion as them, apparently. We got the same Mass, same theology. It's just saying. So is it any wonder that Catholics no longer believe in the Eucharist when they attend a Lutheran service every Sunday? Who believes in the Eucharist anymore at the new Mass? Well, it's people who read, pray, watch Taylor Marshall, and also the old people who were catechized in the old church. Gradually, they're dying, but there's nobody to replace them, so we're seeing the death of the Novus Ordo as we speak. It'll be like practically... I said to our priest, I said, "What's the half-life of the Novus Ordo in your parish?" And he said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Well, it's like the idea from radioactive decay that when half of the material decays, so how long before half of your congregation is dead?" And I think he said between 5 and 10 years, half of his Novus Ordo congregation will be dead. Anyway, the new Mass is Protestant. So we have this situation where we have both Catholics and non-Catholics in the Novus Ordo who attend a Protestant communion service. This service is so ambiguous that everybody can attend, because you could believe in the Eucharist and say it's symbolic, or you can attend and say, "Oh, it's the real presence." It's so ambiguous, it encompasses everybody. And even the priests are ambiguous in what they believe. And it was designed to be that way. The closest, just think about that. You have a Mass that is so ambiguous that any Protestant can attend a thing and feel comfortable. That tells you all you need to know right there. So is it any wonder that Catholics leave the church for Protestant sects in droves? Because you can go over there and you get more biblical preaching. You get rock bands if you like that sort of thing. And then you get like all the divorces that you want, plus contraception. So
yeah, everything's fair game.
Yeah,
you can find one that fits your exact ideas. All the pastors have different theology.
Priests, lady priests. You're set. Just do whatever you want over there. situation where you have both Catholics and non-Catholics living in the same body and sort of being the same religion. The closest parallel that I could find to this from history are the Christological controversies, where you had these ambiguous statements which attempted to cover over the difference between the Orthodox and the heterodox. They fought about this stuff just like we're fighting. And emperors tried to paper it over and say, Roman emperors said, forget about it, it's nothing. I don't want any disunity in the Roman Empire. Just don't talk about this anymore. And I read today about the Monothelite controversy, which started in the year 622. And there was all these excommunications and people fighting, and the emperors tried to paper over and say, don't stop, settle down. But it wasn't until the Third Council of Constantinople in the year 681 that the thing was settled. So it was 60 years of chaos over monothelitism, and people were still in the same church and fighting and all this stuff until it was settled in an ecumenical council. And by the way, that council is the one that anathematized Pope Honorius I for, quote, profane treachery, who did not attempt to sanctify this apostolic church with the teaching of apostolic tradition. So this is what I'm talking about. This is why I say I am like 100% certain that Bergoglio is going to be anathematized by a future pope and an ecumenical council. So what does that mean? Does that mean just go off and become like whatever flavor of Sedevacantism you want? I don't know. I can't tell you about that. But what I can tell you is that things are so bad and Bergoglio is contributing to this chaos that he has to be anathematized. For he's been far worse than Honorius. Honorius was condemned for not attempting to teach the apostolic tradition. Bergoglio has taught against the apostolic tradition. So he's going to get like dug up and thrown in the river like that cadaver synod of I forget which pope was that got dug up.
Well, I don't know. It wasn't Alexander, was it?
No, somebody will probably put it in the comments.
Yeah, there were actually a bunch of terrible popes, but I think Pope Francis could possibly be one of the worst. I mean, one of the worst, maybe the worst.
Because, he's the most heterodox pope ever.
Yeah, because even when you had like these popes who had kids, and like the papacy was basically just like a power struggle and amongst wealthy families, for the most part they weren't corrupting doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
They were just living their lifestyle and living it up in Rome, and they were basically starting conflicts, and I think they had like armies and there was all kinds of that stuff, but still, I mean, the doctrine was intact.
Yeah, very few popes were wavering on doctrine.
Yeah, and even in the corrupt Middle Ages, I mean, we have the Council of Trent. So, who knows? Yeah. Maybe we'll get a miracle council like that in the coming years. But that'd be pretty cool, because then we won't consistently talk about negativity all the time.
Yeah. Let me do my second counterattack against the Protestant accusation. Well, my answer to you, O accuser, is it happens to be Bergoglio who put Luther and Melanchthon on a Vatican postage stamp in the year 2017. So I guess Bergoglio, your purported pope, likes Protestants, so maybe you should get with the program and embrace Protestants like Bergoglio does. Does this mean that in 500 years we'll see Sedevacantists on a postage stamp, like what Bergoglio did? Will Francis II call Bishop de Laurier a great theologian, like Francis called Luther a great theologian? Will the Third Vatican Council remake the Mass with the input of 6 Sedevacantist bishops and turn it into the Tridentine Mass?
So, I'm laughing, but it's valid points.
It's a valid point. So how can Protestantism be that bad? Oh, Mr. Accuser of calling Sedevacantist Protestant. So just to conclude, thirdly, if somehow you equate Protestantism to Sedevacantism, I can say that you truly have no idea what either Protestantism is or Sedevacantism is. So that's the end of that sub point about the accusation. I've countered the accusation of you are a Protestant, that you have no idea what Protestant is. You think it's merely just like not listening to the Pope. It's 1,000 times more than that, because every day from the beginning of like the papacy, there's been guys not listening to the Pope, and that's not have anything to do with Protestantism. So do you have any questions about that?
No.
Okay, and then this is a very quick, 2 more quick points here, and then I'll be finished. And this is a question for the anti-Sedevacantists. So when the Pope dies during the interregnum, what exactly is the difference between Fraternity of St. Peter, SSPX, SSPV, and the CMRI?
Who runs them?
Yeah. I mean, maybe you could also, because I think they're all going to say like that. Maybe Fraternity of St. Peter on paper is going to say like, well, Vatican II's, it's got some questionable things and we need it to get straightened out. Whereas SSPX is going to be really specific and say like, here's the problems with Vatican II. And SSPV and the other Sedevacantist groups are probably going to say Vatican II is just a complete rupture and you have to flush it. Like even Father Heresy, who's not a Sedevacantist, said he would say like, forget Vatican II, put it on a bumper sticker. I want you to make a bumper sticker. Forget Vatican II, put it on your car. So Father Heresy, if you've never listened to Father Heresy, please watch Father Heresy. He is one of the best. God rest his soul. He was a great, great priest who actually was diocesan, but he collaborated with SSPX. He was big into the pre-55 liturgy, hated Vatican II. He was just a really, really cool guy. Question to the anti-Sades. When the Pope dies, can you go to an SSPV mass or a CMRI mass? What's the difference? So I'll conclude. What's the difference between all these different types of Sedevacantist groups? Well, when it comes to the faith, they're exactly the same. I think it comes down to how skeptical are you of the Vatican II changes. If you're Fraternity of St. Peter, you're going to say privately, yeah, Vatican II got off the rails. Publicly, you're going to say, oh, we need the magisterium to just clarify these ambiguities. I mean, even Schneider's stronger. Now, Schneider comes out there, I think Burke does too, and says Vatican II has errors in it. They have to be corrected. And they have to be corrected. So Schneider is more of a man than a lot of these Fraternity of St. Peter guys. I already kind of talked about SSPX says without question that there's wrong stuff in Vatican II. And the Sades say the whole thing was off track and just had a bad spirit to it, so you have to throw it away. I think there's some Sedevacantists who are going to say the Novus Ordo is completely a new religion. You got these new ordination rites that are invalid. Or some are going to say it's questionable, so therefore it should be avoided. I think there's some Sedevacantists who are going to say the new ordination rite is unquestionably valid. So there's a difference there. That's kind of a concrete difference. Another one would be how much attention do you pay to Bergoglio and his decrees and letters? So if you're a Fraternity of St. Peter, a priest, you're going to pay lip service to Bergoglio. If you're a faithful who goes to a Latin mass, like you and I, John and Brett, a lot of times when we see something from Francis, we just laugh at the thing because it's so stupid. And you're like, oh, here we go again. SSPX seems to care. I mean, SSPX looks to see what the Pope says, and they're like, oh, well, this is good. He called for this year of mercy or whatever. But then they also will give a good criticism, like they criticize the motu in approprio. But then you have the what I'd call the hard and the open Sedis, who are just gonna, they really don't pay any attention. I mean, they actually do pay attention to stuff Bergoglio says. If it's crazy, they're going to say, look, see, here's more proof that there's no way this guy can be a Catholic. So that's kind of that's kind of the concrete differences there. And that is the end of this discussion on the PQ, the Pope question. So, John, do you have any questions or remarks there about the thing?
Well, I have some observations. One thought that went through my mind is, what if, and this is pretty theoretical, but what if there was a papal conclave that took like 2 years? Like the Pope died, and the conservatives and the liberals, there were enough of both to conflict over who they're going to elect. Because if there were a group of cardinals that manned up in the last election and said, no, we're not electing this guy who could be a modernist, we're going to elect Cardinal Scola or whatever, they would have manned up and conflicted. There would have been a long conclave.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's 2 years, you have no one running the show, and I don't know that that's, at least with the current group of cardinals, I don't know that that's possible, but certainly with around the Vatican II eras, you could have had certain conflicts like that just because you had some modernists, some conservatives, at least the early Vatican II era.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could have had this.
Apparently that happened with the second election in 78 with JP2. There was 2 blocks. There was Benelli and Siri. And somebody proposed as the alternative, and neither of them could get to 2/3. So somebody proposed Wojtyła as the compromise candidate because he was liberal enough to get liberal votes, but conservative enough to get conservative votes.
Interesting. Well, and you saw both sides of the papacy.
Yeah.
Over the 30 years. I mean, he was Pope for a long time.
78 to 2005.
Yeah. Now, I do want to say I'm not Sedevacantist, and but these are some interesting insights. What was the last thing I wanted to ask you about Bishop Williamson? I know he has a I've heard that he was Sedevacantist, but you told me he wasn't.
No, he's not Sedevacantist.
Do you have a brief background of him? So he was SSPX. He was one of the 4 SSPX bishops that Lefebvre consecrated.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's a convert from Anglicanism that went to SSPX sometime after Vatican II. And he became a priest, and I believe he was a professor at the seminary in America of SSPX. And he was one of the guys that was consecrated by Archbishop Lefebvre in 1988. He was always seen as the guy who was not afraid to take controversial opinions. And that's why everybody loved him, because he just spoke his mind. And so what happened was about the turn of the century, which sounds like a long time ago, but we're talking about the year 2000. SSPX started to do talks with Rome, and that lasted up until, even that happened, and they got the excommunications lifted in 2007, and then there was more talk about them getting a canonical structure late in the Benedict era, maybe that was early Francis, 2012. Now, Williamson at that time was like, no, do not do this. Because, why? Because he said Archbishop Lefebvre said, do not talk to Rome until they get their doctrine right. And by the way, Father Jenkins, on the channel What Catholics Believe, he just did a show about this. If you go on there and watch, it's subtitled Archbishop Lefebvre's last interview, and there's a link on the website of What Catholics Believe. You can read the letter. I don't remember if I sent it to you, but you read that letter, Lefebvre's last interview, and he sounds exactly like Williamson. He says, don't trust Rome, don't have anything to do with them. They're filled with modernists. Forget negotiations. It's all tricks. So that was the Williamson position. And so he was spreading that and trying to kind of blow up SSPX talks with Rome. And they said, we told you to stop this. So they kicked him out. Then he got really worried that they were going to take a deal and it was going to be the end of the resistance. So he consecrated a couple bishops, Bishop Zendejas and a fellow maybe in Brazil, whose name was John something, I don't know. And then he's living in England. He's got a YouTube channel. You can watch his sermons, and they're really good. I like Bishop Williamson, but he's getting old and his mind's starting to slip. But so he's effectively an independent. He's not a Sedevacantist, a straight shooter. And the whole reason he isn't a Sedevacantist and the reason SSPX isn't is they want to maintain some connection to the mainstream Catholic Church, because they're acknowledging that we're all Catholics, and they're acknowledging that we need the papacy to get out of this whole thing. That's not to say that the Sedevacantists don't acknowledge that we're all Catholics or that we need the papacy, but it's just that they say that, well, the Pope, because of his heresies and everything that's going on, he's just not Pope anymore. So spiritually, we can't have anything to do with him. Again, how does that change in the aspects of practice? Well, that comes down to each chapel or individual that you acknowledge. So anyway, that's what I can tell you about Williamson. I do recommend him. There's a great series that he did called the Doctrinary Sessions, which I believe is 15 different YouTubes. Find that on YouTube, the Doctrine Sessions. It's from like the late 90s, that Williamson. It is great. He summarizes the SSPX resistance position. Fantastic.
Okay, well, this show's running a little long, so...
well, I know it would be long. This is a big topic, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good discussion, though. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I see there's some questions, but I don't know how many we can get to. There's one that says, was the Pachamama the abomination of desolation? I would say
could
no.
be. I don't know.
I mean, we had a CC, so...
That was, but that wasn't in Rome, though.
Yeah, I guess not. I don't know. That's a good question. Who knows? I mean, you see the after effects.
Yeah.
Michael asks, are the Sedevacantists still Catholic? Well, you missed the discussion. Go back. I'd encourage you to go back and review it. And
in short, I think that they are. There's no question they believe all that the church teaches, and they follow what the church teaches. Just the question is whether Bergoglio or Montini or whoever was actually a real pope, because they recognized something got so whacked out that they began to, how is it possible that the church could get this whacked out? So it's not like they're Eastern Orthodox or anything. I mean, again, I guess people do ask the question, is James Martin still a Catholic? Well, James Martin has the piece of paper that says in good canonical standing. So the piece of paper that says canonical standing means absolutely nothing anymore. You know, somebody on Twitter, it might have been Brother Martin, posted a picture of some boss nun she's an abortion escort that walks people into abortion clinics. Okay. She's got canonical status. So what does canonical status means? Nothing. And that's all I can say. As you said, follow your conscience.
Follow your conscience.
It's a mess. We're in a crisis like the Monothelite crisis. We've been in it for 60 years, and it's actually getting worse. So you just have to be a Catholic and go to a mass that is Catholic, where there's unquestionable validity of the sacraments.
Yeah, and you need to discern whether the Sedevacantists can accompany you on this great journey. And,
wow.
Well, do they participate in synodality? I mean, we need to have a synod to see whether or not
synod on Sedevacantism.
They meet they meet the standards of the new Pentecost. And
wow. I think you should be named to a pontifical academy. You could be on the preparatory commission for the Synod on Synods.
yeah, that's going to be pretty funny. I wonder how they're going to do that with all the restrictions in place. But that's coming up this fall, the diocesan level synods. So I wonder how many bishops are actually going to be enthusiastic about that. We'll see what happens at the USCCB meeting. Crazy. I don't know. All right, well, this has been a good discussion. I see a lot of comments, a lot of viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Ryan, very much for this discussion. And I just want to say that this has been the Thunder and Lightning Show. We are the laity.
And we will not be silent.